How Albert of Gaul and Clement of Scotland also opposed the papal superstitions about A.D. 750, on account of which they were martyred. It is stated that about A.D. 750 there lived two very eminent men, Albert, surnamed Gallus, that is, of Gaul or France, and Clement, surnamed Scotus, that is, of Scotland. Both opposed the superstitions of common popery in various points. Albert began first in some part of France, and was followed by said Clement, who came from Scotland and joined him. In consequence of this, both, yet each separately, had to feel the sting of the Pope in such a manner as the sequel will show. In order to present this, together with the circumstances pertaining to it, in the most suitable way, we shall treat of each separately, beginning with Albert, since he was the first and principal one in said matter. Albert of Gaul, for opposing the Roman superstitions, cast into prison at Fulda, in which he, to all appearance, perished through want, about the close of the year 750. Enlightened by the heavenly radiance of the doctrine of the apostles, Albert, with voice and pen, had again and again reproved the errors and superstitions of the Roman Church, asserting, namely, that priests or teachers should not be prohibited from marrying, that the relics or bones of the saints ought not to be venerated, that images should not be worshipped or saluted as a religious service, and that the Pope has no right to the primacy or supremacy over the Church. He condemned the masses for the dead, purgatory, etc., as human inventions. Wiselius adds he rejected as unnecessary and superstitious ceremonies, the imposition of hands, the making of the sign of the cross, confirmation, etc., and, in short, all such things as are practiced in popery for the purpose of confirming infant baptism. Boniface, the papal legate, therefore accused him to the Pope, fabricating and disseminating many slanders, which were spewed out against him as bitter gall. The Pope lost no time, nor sought to delay the matter, but immediately condemned him unheard upon these false accusations, and the above-mentioned articles, excommunicated him, and sent the sentence of excommunication to said false accuser, namely to Boniface, his dear legate, that the latter should publish it against Albert throughout France. Hence it is that the papists number him among the heretics, though they fail to show what heresy it was for which he was condemned and thus shamefully excommunicated, which matter must be gleaned from other writers, except the testimony quoted above from Wiselius, according to A.M., that is, Melanus. Having received said letter containing Albert's excommunication from the Pope, Boniface not only caused the same to be published throughout France, and deposed him from his ministry, but also incarcerated him in the monastery at Fulda, in which imprisonment he probably died of hunger, thirst, and divers wants. Further observation respecting the time of the preceding event. Most ancient writers, it seems, with whom also A. Melanus agrees, fix the time of the excommunication and martyrdom of said Albert about A.D. 750. Sebastian Frank fixes it 10 years earlier, namely A.D. 740. However, this discrepancy can easily be reconciled if a distinction is made between the time when Albert commenced to teach against the Pope and the Roman Church, and the time when he was anathematized by the Pope and ultimately deprived of life in the dungeon at Fulda. For 10 years can easily have intervened, and Sebastian Frank may therefore have had regard to the time when he began to teach, while the other authors, including Melanus, may have referred to the time of his death. Regarding this, it appears that John Gizius made a great error, either through incorrect authors or some other reason, when he fixes the time of the aforesaid martyr A.D. 900, see in the margin of the place referred above. Clement of Scotland, a companion of Albert, excommunicated and then burned as a heretic by the Romanists, according to the testimony of the ancients, A.D. 750, for the same reason, namely for opposing and rejecting the Roman superstitions. When Clement, having come from Scotland and joined the aforesaid Albert as a companion and united with him in regard to doctrine, he not only began, but ceased not, even as the friend whom he had found, to combat with the spiritual armor and, if possible, to overcome in an evangelical manner the Pope and the Roman Church in various points, touching mostly her ceremonies. Thereupon he was also accused and put to death in such a manner as in the proper place we presently hope to show. The accusations brought against him were of the same nature as those preferred against Albert, his companion, which was not at all strange, since he had placed himself under Albert not only as a friend and companion, but also as a disciple. For this reason the Pope, through the accusation of Boniface, the papal legate, pronounced the same excommunication against him. But when he presented himself for the purpose of vindicating his conduct in a full synod, Boniface prevented him from taking this course, making the people believe that it were not lawful to admit a heretic who had been excommunicated or excluded from the church to divine worship or to a synodical assembly, yea, that such a one should not be permitted to have the benefit, in whatever this might consist, of the laws or ordinances of the church, seeing that by this pretense his lips were sealed, making it impossible for him to properly defend himself. He had recourse to his pen, and wrote a book concerning this matter against Boniface. Finally, it is stated and maintained that this steadfast witness of Jesus Christ was burned as a heretic by the Romanists, even against the will of Pope Zacharias, about A.D. 750, or a little after. Further observations touching the case of Albert and Clement according to the account of Sebastian Frank. In the year, etc., these two men drew to them much people in France, pretending to be followers of the apostles, and speaking great things of the mysteries of God, and the life and conduct of man. Boniface, Archbishop of France, wrote the whole matter to the Pope, who, in a council of the bishops, laid it before them. They rejected the opinion of the supposed heretic from the church. Finally, he says, they were unanimously deposed and anathematized. Special account of Clement according to P.J. Twisk. Clemens Scotus, a faithful disciple of Bishop Adalbert, taught with great power in France and Germany, especially in Bavaria and Franconia, that the people ought not to have so much power, that he, the Pope, very improperly would forbid the priests or teachers to marry, that he introduced many new and unknown ceremonies into the Church, and originated false doctrines. He, Clement, was condemned without a hearing or examination, and his writings or books were burned.